Welcome to this week's episode of the Cyberwork with Infosec podcast. Each week, I sit down with a different industry thought leader and we discuss the latest cybersecurity trends, how those trends are affecting the work of Infosec professionals, while offering tips for those trying to break in or move up the ladder in the cybersecurity industry. Hopefully, you've all finished your holiday shopping if you have any, or are well on your way to doing so. Many more, of course, will wait until the last minute to complete this time-honored ritual of buying lots of stuff for friends, loved ones, random acquaintances, and others. That's why cybercriminals have such a field day in the months of November and December, finding new ways to glean credit card info, steal identities, or use other people's credentials to buy themselves a bunch of ill-gotten presents. Sam Bouso built the company Precognitive from the ground up as a cybercrime prevention platform that uses device intelligence, advanced behavioral analytics, and AI to monitor more personalized aspects of the user's behavior, e.g. gestures, typing patterns, etc., to pre-detect and prevent fraud across a wide variety of industries, banking, fintech, travel, entertainment, retail, e-commerce, etc. Precog also recently partnered with ShopRunner and is now protecting hundreds of the world's top retailers like Tommy Hilfiger, Kate Spade, Kenneth Cole, etc. We're going to talk today about some of the security risks currently happening in the shopping sphere, fraud creating bots and how to mitigate, as well as fraud prevention measures that actually hurt retailers. We'll also talk about how these issues can be studied and learned by aspiring cybersecurity professionals to make them more marketable come next year's holiday shopping cycle. Sam Bouso founded Precognitive in 2016, marking a dramatic leap forward in the way companies combat online fraud, protect consumer accounts, and authenticate users. Prior to starting Precognitive, Sam joined the product team at 41st Parameter, where he enhanced their fraud technology and helped develop the 41st Parameter's advertising division, AdTruth. He led global product innovation and liaised between clients, business development, and engineering to develop ad tech and device fingerprinting products. 41st Parameter and AdTruth were acquired by Experian in 2013. Sam remained with the company to help further develop and innovate the ad tech platform before striking out on his own to begin work on Precognitive. And that brings us to today. Sam, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Chris. Glad to be here.
Great, and we're very glad to have you. So let's start where we start with all of our guests. How did you get started in computers and security?
Computers, I think I've been involved with since I was fairly young. My parents purchased me like a Radio Shack PC with 8 megahertz, I think, at the time. So
okay. Yep.
I've been playing with computers since I was fairly young, but entering into security was a bit of a coincidence. I was working at a bank on analyzing card portfolios to make them more profitable. And I noticed the biggest problem was fraud.
Yeah.
And one thing led to another, and I was studying comp sci at the time, and I started building essentially what was my first fraud systems at that time to try and stop some of the fraud we were seeing. So that was really how I got into the security side of it, and it's really just progressed from there.
Okay, so this was something that you weren't necessarily moving towards, but you just saw something that was interesting to you, and a sort of space that needed filling, and you jumped in the breach.
You got it. Something that I observed at the time, and then found a way of fixing, and from there I was asked to take over managing fraud for that financial institution, and I've stayed in that field since.
Okay. So we're going to jump right in today and talk about some security issues currently cropping up around the holiday gift buying season. You told me earlier about e-commerce companies who had their Cyber Monday and online holiday deals were bought up en masse by bots, taking advantage of lightning quick processing that humans can't match, which could be resold at later dates for higher price. Is that something new that's been discovered this year? Has that been going on for a while? And how does it work?
Yeah, it's a great question. So bots have been around for a while, and sure. I think where we initially saw them were consumers wanted like sneakers that were very high demand and would sell out very quickly. So some people start writing their own scripts to do these types of things, piecing together their own bots. And then what we saw was people started letting you use them as a regular consumer. So there are websites out there now where you can go in there, put in your credit card information, say, I want this sneaker, and they will get it for you using one of these sneaker bots.
Sort of a fraud software as a service kind of situation.
Yeah, and in some sense that's not always, I guess, depending on the right. terms of the website, et cetera. It's not necessarily fraud, and they're not necessarily doing it maliciously. It's kind of the fear of missing out, right? I really want. Yeah,
I gotta go to my final exam, but I want those shoes or something.
You got it, right?
Yep.
Or,
okay.
they know they sell out really fast, and you want to be one of those few people that get them. So,
Right.
we have seen this around for a while, and you can go find GitHub repositories even that are open source that have code that lets you do this type of stuff, right? So you can modify it, point at a different website, do what you need to do. So, I think it started off not necessarily being malicious in the sense that people just wanted something and they didn't want to miss out, so they had these bots. What we are seeing a bit more of now is with some of these like doorbuster deals, though, the retailers are selling those products or certain items to get people to come to the website and come to the store, and they are discounting them heavily, right? So they can be sold on a secondary market like an eBay or some other auction type site. And this is where we are seeing, now that this technology is a bit more prevalent, you have people using it to snag up all the hot, doorbuster deals. And that does create an issue, obviously, for the retailers, for legitimate consumers. And in this kind of layout, if you will, that's taking place, it's not because they want it for themselves to use and they're fearing of missing out. It's because there's a profit to be made by reselling it. And while it's not necessarily, your classical type of fraud, it is certainly a form of abuse and one that ruins user experience for other people.
Yeah. And I was going to say that seems like apart from the people who want to get the thing at the right price or whatever, it's also, hurting, the sort of natural promotion that the store, intended to get lots of people there. And instead their reason for getting you in the door is completely gone before you even have a chance to browse around. You
got it. Yeah. And it is unfortunate, but we've certainly seen an uptick in that this year. We had seen some of this previously in the prior holiday season, but it seems to be growing year over year. So I think that's also just a natural progression of technology becoming more readily available. And now you don't have to be, a programmer to do this. You can put in a credit card and they'll do it for you. Or you can reconfigure something. So
sure. Is there some sort of a strategy that retailers can use to sort of get around this? Have sort of a one per person kind of thing? Is there a way of sort of noticing that 67 pairs of shoes just went very, very quickly, or is it just one of those things that is the new normal?
No, there's a couple of ways of stopping this. Some of it, depending on the sophistication of the service and even the individual. You could do things as simple as saying you can only ship, one of this item to this address. So you limit, not in necessarily the cart, but just overall, because what they will do is transact once and transact again. You can look at other pieces of data, like we're only going to let, one transaction be allowed for this item per IP address. Right. But that in and of itself will stop, I would say, probably 50% of this. There are the more sophisticated groups that change their IP for every transaction.
Yep.
And to really stop that, you do need a bot mitigation system, something that can assess, when the activity is happening is actually a human or a bot, and be able to make a decision at that level. So it really depends, I think, for the retailer. Certainly, if you're a larger retailer, you're going to need something more sophisticated. You need to have a bot mitigation system to stop this. If you're, a smaller e-commerce shop, you might be able to do something like this with just looking at things like velocity and how many times you've seen things like an address or an IP or even a credit card number, and limiting, the number of items they can purchase from your doorbuster list to one or something along those lines.
Is this sort of a fight fire with fire kind of situation where some sort of automated system is doing most of the work, or would this be something where you would have a certain like a person really like checking the logs as it's happening and watching for aberrations?
Generally, you're going to do this in an automated manner. So you're going to set up some logic that says, hey, if I see the same IP purchase the same SKU, and we know this is one of our doorbuster SKUs, we're going to reject it after the first one. Yep. Likewise, with a bot mitigation system, a lot of those are kind of set and forget, right? You configure it, set it up, and it will stop the bots on your behalf, and you don't really have to deal with this.
Okay, but someone has to obviously write that at one point. But I'm always looking for opportunities for our students to get into the game here. But can you tell me about some other types of consumer fraud, shopping fraud, or online fraud that are unfortunately hot at the moment?
So hot during the holiday season, there are certainly a number of different frauds that pop up we see every year. One we're seeing a bit of now is fake sites. So they are set up to look like e-commerce websites. They have the product that you want, and they have it at a very good, discounted rate.
Yep.
And in a lot of the cases we've seen, the offer is just truly too good to be true.
Right.
But
that's always a good sign.
It does work this time of year. Yeah, this time of year, people are shopping and they're looking for great deals. A lot of times, there's no inventory at all, so you as a consumer might purchase and you won't get anything. We have seen some more sophisticated instances where the front store, if you will, once an order is placed there, the fraudster will actually take a stolen credit card and go place a secondary order at a merchant that really has it and have them ship it directly to you to try and make the illusion that it is a legitimate store.
I see.
And that helps them prevent from getting shut down too quickly,
right?
Or from people filing chargebacks right away, when they think something might not be right or they didn't get the package. And the goal for these guys is to keep their merchant account open on that website long enough until they can pull the cash out, right? And there's, as with any kind of banking setup there's some delta for them to be able to actually get the cash that you spent on that website into their bank account. It's generally a couple of weeks. So they want to keep the appearance of everything looking really nice and legitimate for that period of time. And then afterwards, they'll probably stop filling the orders or whatever it may be. So this is one we're seeing quite a bit of. The other thing we are seeing a lot of is an uptick in phishing around this time of year. So a lot of it's coming from, this is your bank. Did you make a purchase? Please click here. Which, we do sometimes get from our financial institutions, but fraudsters are aware and hackers are aware that this time of the year, these emails do increase because shopping increases. So they also are looking to take advantage of that where, everybody's on the run. We're all busy doing our holiday shopping. Can they get us to click on a link or get us to essentially, can they social engineer us? So one of the kind of plays we've seen on this now is you'll actually get an email that says, hey, it will be legitimately from your bank or from a provider. It says, hey, you tried to do a sign-in and requested, a code. And what you'll get subsequently is a phone call from the actual fraudster pretending to be the bank and saying, hey, we sent you a verification code. I need to confirm it's you. Can you read back the code that you're going to get in this text message or this email? But what they're really having you read back is the multi-factor authentication code or the two-factor authentication. And then what you're basically doing is giving them access to whatever account it is, your bank account, your telephone account. And we've been seeing this increase as well over the holiday season. It's not necessarily a new scam, but one that's just picking up in the number of occurrences, and fraudsters are being or taking advantage of the holiday season and the chaos that ensues sometimes.
Yeah, it's evergreen because it works.
Yeah.
So back in 2008, I remember reading stories about Magecart groups that specifically use malware to steal credit card numbers at the checkout stage of actual retail sites. Is that still a persistent issue? Is that something that retailers have gotten better at defending it?
Yeah, so this is still an issue. Generally with these Magecart hacks, if you will, what's taking place, right, is the fraudsters or hackers in this case want to go after a big retail website or airline or whatever it may be. And those companies generally have good security. So what they go is go to the weakest link. And what they'll generally do is say, okay, let's find some sort of advertising player that has their JavaScript embedded inside of this website we want to go after. British Airways was a great example of this, right? British Airways itself had a Magecart attack. It wasn't them that was breached. It was an advertising vendor that they let run JavaScript on their website. So what the hackers are doing is compromising the weaker link in the chain, and they're replacing code there or injecting code that does this skimming of credit card numbers or credentials. So we do continue to see this. I think this is something that we knew as a security community was a risk. When we go pitch even our technology to a bank, they generally saying, wait, you want to put JavaScript on our page and you're going to host it? And there are ways to mitigate around this. I mean, if you put something in an iframe, for example, you can sandbox it. But there are certain types of text that you can't run in an iframe. Like, I don't know, if I want to see a heat map of how my user navigates through my website for user experience, it needs access to the DOM, to the document object model. So I can't put it in an iframe. It has to run on the page. And that's what these hackers are going after, is let's go compromise these types of services, replace the script with our code or inject them a barcode, and that's how they're lifting this data.
Okay.
So it's a persistent threat, and I think it's one we'll continue to see for a long time.
Yeah, and there's not sort of a one-size-fits-all remedy to it just yet, doesn't sound like.
There isn't, like the iframe is obviously a great thing if you can do it, but sometimes you need to have the script run on the page. I am seeing some entrepreneurs now and cybersec people starting to create SaaS services to help solve this. What they're primarily doing is connecting, a actual browser that's automated, or running, something like a wget or a curl, if you will, to pull down the page and all its scripts on a periodic basis for a merchant or retailer. And what they're doing is seeing, did the script change? And if it did, it triggers an alert and says, hey, retailer, or whoever the company is, go look at this script. Yep. There's been a modification to it. So there is some technology coming out to help detect it. We haven't seen much in terms of mitigating it yet, because somebody has to take the script out. There are some ways of doing this, but I think we just haven't built the tech yet.
Okay, on its way. So do account takeover scenarios figure into all this at all? And if so, how? Have you seen any cases of this? And is there a way to defend against that as a whole?
Yeah, account takeover has been growing year over year, for the past 5 or 6 years. A lot of what we do now at Precognitive is preventing account takeover. It wasn't something that was for us like a primary use case. It was just something we knew how to do, but there is a lot of demand around that because of how much account takeover fraud is happening. I think year over year, the increase we see is anywhere from 30 to 40% in the number of account takeover attacks that we're seeing. So it continues to grow pretty rapidly. From an account takeover perspective, I think there's a number of things that are already being done. Obviously, the shift to things like two-factor authentication, MFA, help harden and make this a bit more difficult for fraudsters to do. A lot of these account takeover attacks are generally starting out elsewhere too, right? Some data breach happens, like the Magento marketplace one that you mentioned, for example.
Yes.
Assuming there were credentials which I don't think there was in this case, those credentials are unfortunately getting used by the consumer on many different websites. So the fraudsters will go and conduct what we call a credential stuffing attack. So I'll take a list of username passwords that were breached maybe even a year or so ago. I'll put them into a tool that I have, and I'll plug them up to a bunch of websites and let it go test to see which credentials have been reused. So if you use the same username password on your Yahoo email, and then you've used it on your, Bank of America, credit card, they could potentially access that account.
That's a classic.
So, and then, the actual usage of it takes place. So credential stuffing itself continues to rise in terms of the number of attacks we're seeing. But there is good technology now to help stop that. So if you're a large enough kind of target, there's a plethora of solutions out there that you can plug in to mitigate these types of attacks.
Okay, so one of the topics we discussed in the introduction that's very intriguing to me and I had not heard of before was e-commerce fraud protection strategies that hurt retailers. Can you give me an example of that?
Yeah, so when we generally are looking at like what people are doing to try and defend against fraud, one of the big issues that a lot of these techniques tend to introduce is friction for the consumer. So we have seen a number of retailers try to do things where when they have issues with account takeover and credential stuffing, they're doing things like inserting reCAPTCHA type approaches. So you have to solve the reCAPTCHA to get in. We can also see though from those same analytic scripts that we're using for our bot mitigation and so forth, that people tend to bounce pretty frequently when they're prompted with these reCAPTCHA type challenges.
Oh, yeah.
We've seen other sorts of friction like that where retailers are unable or businesses are unable to make decisions in real time and are requiring consumers to have some sort of contact with the business directly. So either some of the customer service calling out to verify an order,
Right.
things along those lines.
I see.
And we also see that those tend to really hurt sales. A lot of those orders are actually legitimate. They're false positives because the decision to put it on hold was not good. And people are out and about. They're not picking up their phones, and certainly not for a number they don't know. And ultimately, the retailers in a lot of these cases don't end up sending the product because they didn't make contact with the consumer. Right? They'll tag it as suspected fraud and cancel it. When we go and analyze these, we see on average about 50 to 70% of these rejected orders are actually false positives. So, if you're a retailer, you're putting on review, for example, say 5 or 6% of your orders, and then half of those you are rejecting or not fulfilling. That's anywhere from 2, 3, 4% of your revenue, depending on how much you're stopping like that. Yeah. So that's another technique we're seeing is generally around just introducing friction, not being able to make decisions in real time, where it has a negative impact on both revenue for the retailer as well as the consumer shopping experience. And another thing we've noticed there is when you put up friction for a consumer and they go elsewhere, I believe the stat we came up with was like 37% of the time they never come back to your site.
Yeah.
Right? So
they've been burned.
They're like, okay, whatever, I'm going to X site instead, and they have it, and they forget about you.
Right.
So it is a big risk, I think, and certainly a strategy that's been fairly harmful for a variety of retailers out there.
Do you get the sense that retailers are getting the message about this? Do they see that they're losing this revenue, or are you having to sort of explain it to them and then they have to sort of change their tactics?
That's a really great question. I would say it's a bit of a split. There are retailers where when we actually start showing them the numbers, they have the kind of jaw drop effect and say, oh my God, I didn't know this was happening. Right. How long has this been happening? And, they maybe have been doing it for years. And there's also another, I think, maybe more knowledgeable group or subset, if you will, of retailers that are aware this is happening. They are trying to take steps to help mitigate it and reduce, the friction for the consumer. So it's a bit of a split, but if I had to say one way or the other, I would say most are unaware. Has been my experience.
Okay, so that's on the to-do list for the next couple of holiday seasons. Then change the minds. So I like to sort of speak or ask you about strategies and stuff at various levels of e-commerce. So for instance, what are some security strategies that smaller mom and pop type stores should be familiar with in the shopping heightened season, as opposed to larger corporations or enterprises?
Yeah, that's a great question. For smaller shops, getting a fraud tool and a system might not be financially viable for you, right? Depending on the volumes. There are certain things you can look at that are basic checks. Looking at even something like where is an item actually shipping to on Google Maps, and taking a look at the street view can be very telling. A lot of times you'll find fraudulent packages are going to what appear to be abandoned buildings or warehouses, things of that nature. So you don't have to be a fraud expert or anything else to be able to pull something like that up on the Google Maps and say, okay, this just isn't right.
Yep.
I would also look at the data that you do get from the bank. There's something called an address verification service, or an AVS, that on every time a card is processed, the merchant gets back a response that says it matched, it didn't match, it partially matched. And furthermore, you get it's the one thing the bank is actually confirming for you, right? Is it whether or not this address that they gave you as their billing address is correct.
Right.
So I think one of the more basic things is making sure you do have a good match. And what you will see sometimes is if a fraudster knows the right billing address, they're going to put that in, but they're going to ship it somewhere else. So looking at when you have a good match but a different ship, where is it shipping to? Does the distance make sense? Does it make sense that I have a billing address in New York, but it's shipping to New Mexico?
Right.
Like you want to use some common sense there and kind of take a look at what's taking place. So I think those are kind of basic tips for, your mom and pop shops. There are certainly services you can use as well to do things like look up a consumer's email address to see how long it's been around, if anybody else has had a problem with that consumer. So those cost a little bit of money, but they're not very expensive services and could kind of be the next step up before you get yourself a fraud prevention system.
Gotcha. So turning the lens in the other direction, as shoppers and users of the online experience, what tips or general guiding principles do you think there should be for people who are doing a chunk of their shopping online this season?
Yeah, so I think there are three things consumers can really kind of do to help protect themselves. First of all, I think when you're shopping online, as I was mentioning a bit earlier, is make sure you're on a reputable website. We are seeing a lot of these bogus sites that are coming up. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. You should move on and go find something else. I think the other thing we see a lot of, which happens around this time of year, is you are, as a consumer, signing up and creating a lot of accounts, right? You're creating accounts on websites as you're purchasing from them. One of the big weak points we see in consumer activity is reusing the same username password. And then doing things like saving your card number on there. You've now basically, one of these sites now gets hacked and the username password gets out there. Anywhere you've saved your card number or your billing information or have purchased before and signed up with that same username password is now at risk of either that data getting out there and you becoming a victim of identity theft at some point, or them just using your cards that you've saved on file with these retailers to commit fraud. So I think number two is do not reuse the same passwords. Make sure you're using a different password on each site. And if it's a pain, get yourself one of those, password tools that are out there where you have one master password and it remembers and automatically logs you in with a different password for each site. So I think that's another important tip. And the third one I think would go back to a bit around the social engineering stuff we're seeing. So this fraud scheme I was mentioning earlier, where consumers are getting called by who they think is their bank and being asked for codes. We're seeing a lot of it this holiday season. It's a pretty good trick. But I would say, when you're getting phone calls and you think you're speaking with your financial institution, one, the financial institution will never really, should never ask you for anything like that. It should never ask you for a password. It should never ask you to read them a code. Right. So if they're asking you to divulge information to them, you should take that as a red flag. And what you should do is say, you know what, let me call back the number on the back of my credit card. So disconnect that conversation. You call the bank directly, and that way you're really talking to the bank, and you can inquire to see if there's an issue. So I think the third one would be, be vigilant who you're actually talking to, and if you're ever in doubt, cancel the communication and go directly through a channel that is getting you to the right place.
Right. So we've talked about a couple of times here that there are certain fake or disreputable looking sites that are offering things at too good to be true prices. Do you have any sort of guiding principles? Are there any particular sites or things online that you want to just kind of call out and blacklist now, or even just sort of like be on the lookout for things that look like this? Because like you said, everyone's looking for the best possible deal, and sometimes you think with your heart rather than your gut. So
yeah, I think one, like, if it looks too good to be true, obviously that's a big red flag, and it usually is. If you want to do a little bit of research, you could take that site name and do something like Google search it to see if you can see other reviews and what people have done. If you're a bit more tech savvy and you know how to do like a who is lookup, I would actually go do like a who is lookup on the domain and see when it was created. One commonality we see with a lot of these is they are brand new. They've been created like 5 days ago. The site gets thrown up and suddenly it's selling $500 shoes for $200, right?
Right.
So I would say, if you know how to do that, to take a look at like when was the site created, and just see, has anybody else, reported this company as being good or bad, and how far back does that go? Because we also do see fake reviews. So some of these guys are clever enough to go, put reviews on about their site. But there's, you'll generally see though that, the review maybe goes back a month at most. Like there's nothing a year ago talking about this website because it is brand new.
Right. Or they all hit the same point in the same way.
Yeah, exactly. So I think just really, if it doesn't seem right, it probably isn't. And if you really want to double check at that point and aren't sure, do a little bit of research. And most of the times, you'll find plenty of red flags to tell you, your initial assumption was correct and you should go elsewhere.
Okay, so we noted also in our intro that Precognition partnered with ShopRunner and that you're protecting hundreds of the world's top retailers. So, without giving any like specific secrets away, what are some of the highest level security strategies for retail sites like this that are working on a global scale? We talked about mom and pops, but like, what are some of the higher levels of threat that places like Kate Spade and stuff have to worry about?
Yeah. So the amount of fraud that you see as a larger business obviously increases, and the sophistication level changes as well. One thing with fraud is it's always changing, right? So the attack you see this week will be gone by next, and there'll be a new one with some sort of tweak or modification or something completely new you've never seen.
Yep.
So generally at a large enterprise, what we're doing is really setting up a bunch of safety nets and doing a multi-layered approach. Typically up front, we're looking at things like bots. Is the activity that we're seeing human versus automated, and being able to differentiate there. We do a lot around understanding the device and the connection itself. So when a device connects to a website, we have what we call a device grid, which is essentially a database of all devices we've seen. We've got 1 billion plus active user devices we see. What we look at there is, has anybody else reported the device as being bad within our network?
Okay. All right.
How long has the device been around? Usually newer devices are higher risk. We've seen you around for a while. You're more legit. And then where is the device coming from, geolocation wise? What type of connection it's coming off of? Is it using something like a Tor relay or a reverse, or a proxy or a VPN? So looking at all of those flags and really understanding the device itself, the connection, differentiating if it's a human or a bot. What we do that's really interesting at Precognitive then is looking at the consumer behavioral pattern. So, I'm sure you shop online. Like, do you ever go to a website and just buy the pair of jeans you saw?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sure.
But do you just buy them like as soon as you see them, or is it generally you typically will look at them and you probably think about it?
Oh, I see.
There, right?
Put it in your wish list or think about it or mull it over or comparison
see
shop.
If you can get a coupon, or comparison shop. So
right. Sure, of course.
There is a pattern to what normal consumers look like that we profile and look at. So if you come to a website and you put in $1,000 item in your cart and you check out, well, we want to look at, like, have you looked at this $1,000 item before? Did you show me interest in it last week or the week before? It's kind of a big purchase, right?
Yeah, it's not an impulse buy.
You got it. So this is where we use behavioral analytics to look at what has this consumer shown us intent in. How fast do they go through the website? We also find, like, if you think about a website you use a lot, maybe a Facebook or a Gmail or something, how quickly you go through it. Fraudsters who are actively committing fraud on like an enterprise site, they get good at going through that website. So we can also see things like this checkout happened in 35 seconds end to end, whereas we know the average time is about 5 minutes. So these are also anomalies that we look at. So at an enterprise level, we are employing technology like this on behavioral analytics side, as well as device intelligence. And then what we do is take all this data when you finally hit that submit button and make your purchase, and we feed it into a machine learning model that's been trained against prior fraud. So it'll come back and tell us, hey, this looks good. This is definitely bad. And it's up to the retailer, but sometimes you can create what we call a manual review range. Okay. And this is where a human analyst would come in, take a look, and make a decision.
Okay, that was going to be my next question is whether, because we talked about false positives before with CAPTCHAs and or others or things like that. So, but it sounds like you're not so much shutting things down as you are sort of offering suggestions through this extension.
Yeah, we are blocking the in real time. We will block fraud that we know is 100% fraud. Sure. You got it. We've seen them commit fraud before. We know this pattern is fraudulent. We'll block it.
Yep.
Our goal is always to approve, obviously, as many consumers as we can and not reject them.
Right.
But there is also this kind of gray area where the order might not look exactly legit, but we're not sure it's bad. And that's usually about 1 to 2% of transactions for us that will queue into work, pending some analysts to review it and make a decision. And it's interesting at the enterprise level. That 1 or 2% for a big retailer now actually becomes pretty significant. So during holiday seasons, we actually do adjust it down to reduce everybody's workload there. We don't want to inundate anybody with thousands and thousands of orders a day to review.
For sure. So, turning things to sort of a career slant here, because I'm sure we'll still be talking about this topic come the holiday 2020 season. I want to ask this for our aspiring security professionals amongst us watching and listening today, who might like some career advice. What types of skills, education, or experiences would you recommend for people who want to be on the front lines of defending against and finding new forms of e-commerce fraud and bot fraud and so forth? What you do?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think depending on what you want to do within that space, the fraud prevention space is pretty big. Find something that is of interest of you or to you within the fraud space and kind of go after it. I think one natural area and where people who come in with kind of a data analytics mindset, so having experience with things like databases, analyzing large amounts of data, being able to identify patterns in data. Those are all good skills to have. Obviously, being able to write code and develop. A lot of what we do to stop the fraud is based off of business logic that we're putting in place. And furthermore, I would say just one thing that we always find with good fraud analysts is just people who are very inquisitive, who will look at something and want to understand, why is this the way it is? How does it work? How was it put together? So if you have those sorts of, I would say, aptitudes and enjoy things like that, or enjoy doing, the idea of investigating something sounds fun to you.
Yeah.
Those are all skills that are very valuable in this space. So I think the ability to really analyze data, dig into it, is what sets a lot of folks apart in terms of how good they are, right?
Yeah.
As fraud prevention, whether it's analysts or people setting up fraud strategy, a lot of it does come down to being able to analyze data and extract insights from there that you can act upon.
Okay. Can you suggest any kind of strategies for learning that stuff if you're not already doing that in your day job, like sort of outside of your current experience?
Yeah, I think a great learning ground, if you're interested in getting into data analytics, data science, is Kaggle. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's a website that has a lot of open source data sets that have been released.
Okay.
And then individual users there can download these data sets, they can model against them, they can analyze them, and they can actually show their work. And everybody does. So even if you don't know where to start, you'll see, other people's pages who have worked on this data set and how they came up with their solution, what their results were, what their stats were, what type of metrics they were able to hit. So I think for anybody trying to get into, kind of data science and data analytics, especially in the fraud, cybersecurity space, there's a lot of good data sets there. You can kind of play around and get a sense of one, do I like doing this?
Yeah.
Am I good at it? And this is something I want to pursue further.
Great. So as we wrap up today, what are some security trends and fraud strategies that you expect to see or that you're even spearheading yourself in 2020 and beyond?
That's a great question. So there's some interesting changes happening in the fraud space in general on the card payment side. So in Europe, we have something called strong consumer authentication now that's come out that says, for transactions, you have to get a secondary factor or confirmation from the user that they're buying something. So if you're in the EU now and you buy a pair of jeans, you either have to log into your bank's website, you're going to get a text message or something to say, is it really you buying the jeans? So I'm expecting that we'll start to see some of this trickle into the US. There's another big push from the payment networks themselves on something called 3D Secure 2.0, which lets merchants send more data back to the bank so the bank can give you a better fraud decision as to whether or not they're going to accept it. So I think what we're going to start to see from the card fraud perspective is there will be a decreasing amount of card fraud that we're seeing. Where we anticipate there will be additional lift in fraud or increases fraud is still going to be on account takeover and credential stuffing account takeover, as it's been growing year over year. So we think this problem will continue. And the other thing we're expecting to see a lot more of is automated attacks coming into 2020. So automated attacks, traditionally have been things like credential stuffing attacks to perpetrate account takeover. What we're seeing now is automated attacks to do other things like scrape PII data or even set up more complicated fraud schemes. So we are seeing some attacks that are automated that will not only log in, but even go through and create the purchase themselves. And And that's a pretty interesting step, whereas
Hmm.
generally it would be a real user, the fraudster would log in and kind of commit the fraud, what we call the cash out, the final step of the fraud.
Yeah.
But we're seeing some of that now. The number of occurrences where that's automated is going up. And I think this is also going to be a really big issue for 2020 because some of the ones we've seen are very clever. They will do low dollar amount orders. They will place them on almost a schedule. So the same fraud bot will come back every day and buy a similar item or same item, but try to stay under the radar. And somewhere, somebody's sitting there at the warehouse collecting packages. So that's something we are anticipating seeing more of as 2020 rolls in.
Okay. So you told us a little bit about it, but as we wrap up here, tell me all about Precognitive and some of the strategies and services that you offer your clients.
Yeah. So Precognitive is it's a cybercrime prevention platform is kind of at heart what we've built there. It's a platform that has 3 different products linked into it. The first thing we do, I was touching on a bit earlier, was around device fingerprinting and device intelligence. So if you're on the mobile device or on a web browser, we're able to get and gather a lot of information on your device itself. So what type of device is it? Where is it coming from? Is there anything wrong with it that we can tell? The second thing that we do in our second product is around behavioral analytics and behavioral biometrics. So we can see, again, how do you go through a website? What are you looking at? We can even see how do you type. So if you're typing your username, for example, what's your key down to key up time, your flight time to the next key, your key up, key down, key up time there. And we actually measure those on things like logins over and over so that we can get a physical sample of how you type. We never see your username or your password, just how long it takes you to type it and how you actually type it. So that's the second product that we have. And the third product really ties the first 2 in, and that's a decision engine called Decision AI. So Decision AI is a hybrid. It's a rules engine with a machine learning layer in there as well. And when something happens like a transaction or a login, our clients give us a call to our API and say, hey, I have this purchase, for example. Is it good or bad? What we do at that point is go connect all the data. We connect all the device intelligence, geolocation data, the behavioral data, what you're actually purchasing, and we'll make a decision and tell you if it's good or bad. So at a high level, that's what Precognitive does. We've got some other functionality, things like bot mitigation, et cetera, that kind of play into that. But those are the core products and how they work.
Great. If our listeners want to know more about Precognitive or you, where can they go online?
Yeah, certainly. You can visit us at precognitive.com. Which is our corporate site, and you'll find plenty of information there, not only about our services and technologies, but we do have some active articles that we push out there on what we're seeing as the latest fraud trends and what's kind of changing in the fraud and payment ecosystem. Okay.
And do you have a Twitter or anything you like to do? Social media at all?
I do. Most of my social media, though, for Precognitive is done through the Precognitive account.
Got it.
So it's Precognitive Inc. If you like to connect with me, you can find me on LinkedIn as well as Sam Bouso. So I can certainly share a link with you afterwards.
Terrific. Sam, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for your time today. I really enjoyed speaking with you, and I hope your audience enjoys our holiday chat.
Yes, and I hope we save a few credit cards this season here.
We're trying.
And as ever, thank you all for listening and watching. If you enjoyed today's video, you can find many more on our YouTube page. Just go to youtube.com and type in Cyberwork with Infosec to check out our collection of tutorials, interviews, and past webinars. If you'd rather have us in your ears during your workday, all of our videos are also available as audio podcasts. Just search Cyberwork with Infosec in your favorite podcast catcher. To see our current promotional offers available to listeners of this podcast, go to infosecinstitute.com/podcast. And as we've been saying before, we have a free election security training resource that you can give to your poll workers in your area to alert them to the cybersecurity threats they might face during this election season. For information about how to download your training packet for poll workers, visit infosecinstitute.com/IQ/election-security-training, or click the link in the description. Thank you once again to Sam Bouso, and thank you all for watching and listening. We'll speak to you next week.